A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to day 2 of the second edition of Wood Presents vdonxtasia Week 2022. vdonxtasia Week is the virtual avatar of our annual conference, vdonxtasia, the oldest and the most engaging B2B event in the online video space, held annually since 2017. Before we move on, we'd like to thank our presenting partner, Wood, and Insights partner, NEPA, for their support. The first session of the event is a panel discussion, The Tipping Point. On the panel, we have Harshdeep Chhabra, Senior VP, Mindshare, Karthik Sharma, Group CEO, Omnicom Media Group, Mohit Joshi, CEO, Havas Media Group, and Vanita Keswani, CEO at Madison Media Sigma. The session will be moderated by Shrikant Khandekar, co-founder and CEO at AFAX. Welcome, everyone. The audience is requested to please stay back as we have 2 more interesting sessions lined up. Over to you, Mr. Khandekar.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Video Next Week and welcome panelists. Thank you for being here. I'm going to get quickly to the subject, which is, there is a common wisdom which you see articulated all along, that OTT is growing very rapidly, which it is, okay? But that therefore somehow TV is fading out. This is not what people in the business believe, but generally outside there is this thing, oh, TV people are cutting cord, etc., and OTT is a thing. But let me just give you some figures which are broadly correct, okay? So one thing is that the amount of money spent on advertising on television was 30,000 crore in 2021. And on OTT, it was about 1/4 of that, say roughly about 8,000 crore. Even if OTT grows very rapidly, which recent estimate by Media Partners Asia said it'll get to 18,000 crore from 8,000, TV will still be significantly larger, at least twice as large, maybe more in terms of advertising. And the reason for that is that TV is in not virtually, but in almost all households. It reaches 900 million people. Listen, I'm sorry, folks, all of you on the panel. This is stuff that you all know, but I have to mention it for the audience. That, that nearly 900 people watch it, 900 million Indians watch it every month. And in the case of OTT, it is more like about 1/3 of that figure, maybe 40% of that figure. And people who watch TV spend about 4 hours a day on television, whereas they spend 1 to 1.5 hours on OTT. Okay, so TV has a lot going for it. So the question we are going to discuss with my fellow panelists is, what will it take? So OTT is clearly on the rise. It's a very powerful medium, but what will it take for OTT to become, truly challenge television? Okay. So may I request each of you to take a minute, at most 2 minutes, and just give an overview of how you see the situation. Should we start? Vanita, would you like to start?
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. That's a privilege. Thank you so much. What I would like to say is that as I see it, the first thing that comes to the mind of all advertisers and media planners is efficiency. Of course, there are larger issues of measurement. I'll come to those. But the first thing is efficiency. And how do you measure efficiency? Firstly, the whole integrated measurement system itself is not there. But even if you look at CPMs, as you rightly said, the numbers also are 1/3. So even this cost efficiency, which is CPM terms, would be like right. Television comes to almost 1/4 for a Hindi-speaking belt, so to say. South anyway, TV is very, very, very cheap, right? Nothing can beat television for South and regionals. Even in Hindi speaking markets. So the way most of us most planners land up using it is those isolatable markets on digital, which are non-isolatable on television. So that's the piece that really is currently striking more, in my opinion, for OTT space. Right?
Give one example of an
For example, Delhi, Bombay, all the key cities and stuff like where digital penetration is also very high. Right. And, you can't isolate it on television. Okay. So if you want to boost more markets within Hindi speaking markets, that works. Right. So I'm talking about the positive now. Your question is what will make it interesting? The one is that it needs to be cost effective. It is, even at current numbers, claim numbers, it's not cost effective. That's my first piece. Right. Now the second piece is even this claim numbers, there's no third party verification.
Right.
So ComScore talks about a certain number. For example, I wouldn't like to name the OTT, but if the ComScore talks about OTT at X million, the actual OTT player talks about, anywhere between sometimes 3x as wide as that range. So what is to be believed, right? So, and the third is, like I said, the integrated measurement, which is extremely critical, because currently there is no integrated measurement. Now, all the agencies, most top agencies do have their own tools to do an integrated television plus. But that doesn't...
Vanika will come back to this.
Yeah, no problem.
Because I think you've summed up the session actually. So that's a good point. Okay. Mohit, would you like to go?
Yeah. So in my view, Shrikant, as you said, that while we speak a lot about OTTs, but relatively the kind of spends that are going behind OTT are not that significant. And there is a reason for that. Vanita did mention about some of them. And I just want to add to that. See, one is we still in India don't look at audiovisual planning in an integrated manner. And that's something that we've been trying to do at our own levels, but it is still not seen as an integrated audiovisual planning market, right? People see television separately, people see digital separately, and OTT is somewhere in the middle over there, where today we are trying to integrate it with TV. In my view, TV plus OTT plus OLV is what we should be looking at an overall level, which is the integrated audiovisual planning. But the problem is, again, as Vanita very rightfully mentioned, there's no integrated measurement. Hence, how do you go to the client? And while we'll have our own tools and we'll show our integrated reach curves, but the client wants a third party.
So the third party thing is
not there, which is actually not there. And that does not allow us to use OTTs in the fair way in which they could have.
Okay. All right.
And the last thing is the cost. End of the day, you yourself said that television reaches a significant amount of audiences. Hence, when you look at cost per thousand, the bottom denominator is so big that no matter what you do, television will always come across as a cost-effective.
Sure. Okay. Point taken. Karthik?
Good evening, everyone. I think most of the points between Vanita and Mohit have already said. So all the points are valid. There are 2-3 ways to look at it beyond this. One is, where will OTT gain from? You said they are challenged. To my mind, they are not challenged so much by television as much as they are challenged by other players, other video players in the market who have scale, right? They're really scale. And that, along with all the points which Mohit and Vanita have spoken, be it cost effectiveness, measurement, that's one side of the piece. The second one, I think, is...
Sorry, Karthik. So when you say it's not just TV, it is who?
So it could be a YouTube, it could be a Facebook, right? Sure. So you're competing, if I'm an OTT player with 200 million.
Actually, I had a question around YouTube. So same thing.
So it could be, that's one. The other thing which the simplistic way we are thinking in our mind is that all GRPs are equal, right? So one TV GRP, one YouTube GRP, or one impression, whichever metric you want to look. We have done a lot of work where we are seeing that it's not same. The attention that consumers are giving to various platforms is very different. It's still a very early, intuitively everyone understands it, but there's not enough work happening so far in India. It's a lot of global work.
Okay.
Therefore, the real question is, and advertisers will always tend to put money. If you see this problem, this is not a unique problem only for OTT. Every single new so-called medium goes through this phase. A phase of when very few people come and support it. Then there will be one inflection point, and then there is a massive growth.
Okay. Good.
So the point really is that when is that inflection point coming? The inflection point to me has already happened, because we have...
Okay, Karthik, don't reveal the ending. I mean, because the whole thing is about the tipping point. So. Okay.
Fair enough. Okay. So the challenges are, of course, on cost and measurement, those three, four themes which Mohit and Vanita have spoken.
Sure. But, we'll return to that. return to some of these issues. Yeah, Harsh. Hi, Harsh.
Hi, Shrikant. Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks. It's an honor to be a part of this esteemed panel. I think between the panelists before this, whether we spoke about a unified measurement system, whether we spoke about the reach price equation, or whether we spoke about the absolute scale, I think some of the points have been covered. Maybe I'll just build on one of the points, which is the absolute scale of OTT, and more so in the context of women audiences, where OTT still tends to be a little more skewed towards male audiences as compared to some of the other mediums. Right. But largely, that's where the set of problems is. I think one more thing that I would like to highlight is that it's also the way of working as far as some of the OTT players are concerned, and the way in which networks are approaching this. Right. And I think that's something they can fix pretty quickly, because they don't seem to be coming with one consolidated solution, which is TV plus video. When we're talking about the traditional broadcasters, they seem to still be working in silos, even within their own ways of working. And I think that's one quick unlock if they choose to such address it, outside of the larger points that the panelists have already made.
Yeah. So one thing, I have a question, and if you could please answer just in yes or no, and with a brief explanation, a one-line explanation, is considering the number of people who are on OTT relative to television and the amount of time that they spend on it, does OTT get its fair, does it get a share of advertising which represents the amount of time people spend on it relative to other media? You can, now it's open, anyone can respond, please.
I don't think it's about this amount of time. I think it's about the absolute number of people. And that's, we've seen enough number of campaigns that we've put on to large campaigns. The minute we start scaling up on OTT, we tend to see significant amount of under deliveries. And that is not necessarily happy news for an advertiser when you plan for something and you don't get that delivery back. So yes, there may be claimed numbers like Vanita was saying, and there may be people coming on platform, but are they able to deliver to a campaign objective? At least in my sense, the minute we scale up, it doesn't seem to happen.
Okay, so there's a point Harsh you made about the fact that they don't come. They come. You're talking about broadcasters. They come in isolation only with the OTT offering. And why would they do that? I mean, we don't have a broadcaster or a OTT player on this panel. So why would they do that?
Look, I'm frankly stumped myself. Okay. But I have... Sorry, I just say that when we speak to a Google or we speak to a Meta, they seem to have integrated their offerings and they seem to be able to speak irrespective of which platform it is. So Meta will give you a Facebook plus Insta plus WhatsApp in some form solution. Google will give you a search plus video solution. I'm yet to see that as far as any of the broadcasters are concerned.
Okay.
I don't know why. I think Mohit may know.
Mohit, you were saying.
I think the reason is what I said. We don't look at audiovisual planning in a cohesive manner in India. And if you look at Star, Star is selling, Star Sports is selling their own IPL. Hotstar will be selling, will be having a separate team. If tomorrow they are going integrated to a client and explaining them how the two of them can add value together, and they may be having their own reasons because each one of them have their own P&Ls, right? Similar is the case with others. So that's a very big challenge, which I feel the OTTs have. And the moment they get placed against a television, they tend to lose because television has that reach, television has that impact, television has that cost per thousand, which is significantly lower than that. Right. I think the way they have to be sold is very different.
So, so when you look at, sorry, Karthik, Vanita, would you like to add to that?
No, I just wanted to reiterate the point that Karthik made, that, then OTTs have to look at the big daddy within the digital video space, which is YouTube. That itself is like a big gap, right? I mean, and within OTT now, then Hotstar is the big daddy, right? So that's the way one has to look at things also. That's one way to look at it, not versus TV, but within the digital space as well. So it depends how they are looking at their positioning and their
So actually, since the YouTube thing has come up, and now you also mentioned Hotstar, in fact, one of the questions I had later was this: that is it? So if please correct me if my figures are not correct, but if there's 8,000 crore worth of advertising, was about 8,000 plus crore worth of advertising on OTT, YouTube probably picked up 3,000 to 4,000 crore of that. I'm assuming, but so would be, let's say, 40 to 50% of that, right? It's also the oldest. It's been around 15 years, right? It is not just a matter of reach, but the way in which it allows advertisers to look at to measure, the response to their advertising, everything. So that has become like the standard in OTT, right? So is that the thing? So I'm returning to that same thing. Is it very often OTT against which it is compared? I mean, is that the closest competitor to other OTT players when it comes to advertising? It's YouTube more than TV?
If I can give a perspective and others
Please.
can add to that. See, when OTT's delivery is in a way, it's all digital, right?
Right.
The fundamental belief or the mental model, whether advertiser or agency is using, is more digital means more measurement, high degree of accuracy in measurement.
Right.
When that falls short due to various reasons,
Right.
then the demand will not follow supply. Right? Because if you tomorrow there is maybe another product, whatever name, which is digital, we will expect it to be far more measurable. And if it falls short for whatever reason, why should we do what it demands? So it's very natural tendency to go and put money where I know at least maybe 70-80% I know that this works. And the second point is another one. It's really not apple to apple comparison how TV and OTT is planned. If you just keep it very simple and think, in a channel there are multiple programs.
Right.
Brands buy those programs through which we are buying the audiences on television, right? I really don't care the program, but it's really the audiences I care. But in OTT, first of all, I don't even know how many audiences. Even if I were to take the claimed value as is, it's not that all the so-called shows or programs within an OTT are doing well. So the number one program in one OTT and the number two program will be another OTT. So how many OTT should I therefore buy? And therefore the audience aggregation through any one platform is not that easy. And that is possibly what is happening. What Harsh is saying is that you're not able to, it falls short. If I want to reach 100 million audiences because my brand demands it, I only get 30 million audiences. Where do I go for that 100 million? So there are those nuanced points which makes it not so a bit of challenge today for marketers and agencies.
So when there is when typical, I mean, you've already mentioned several of the points, but when the typical conversation with a client goes, I know it's a very broad question, but when a typical conversation with a client goes, what is the point on which, he/she tips towards OTT or decides against it? And
there are two things which happen. One is sports led or big properties led. And currently last 2 years, if you were to see, it's mainly been IPL. No surprises there. The other logic I am guessing most agencies would use, there are two planning logic one can use. One is the incremental reach logic, or even within TV, there are light viewers of television, right? All TV viewers are not equal. Somebody is watching 5 hours TV. Maybe I'm watching only 15 minutes, right, and I'm also consuming OTT. And that will give me incremental reach amongst the light viewers. So those are typical logic, many of the agencies. There could be a third logic for performance-driven clients, where there is some kind of established norm saying if I put $100, 100 rupees in OTT, I am able to generate maybe 300, 400, 500 levels of sales or ROI. And that will not be the entire universe. That may not be true for FMCG, may not be true for other categories. But it will be true for certain types of businesses, say maybe a food delivery business or a bank or so on and so forth, where there are clear metrics around businesses like sales or leads.
Yeah, sure.
You can attribute.
Is there anything else?
I think one more tipping point, something that tends to work well and OTT players have gotten it right is that they've kept it to non-skip, and they've kept it to a scenario where at least what I want to say, I can say in totality, rather than assuming that, somebody got the message in 5 seconds or in 15 seconds. And the fact that it's non-skip advertising tends to work extremely well in the favor of OTT, along with the kind of inventory that, it's not very heavy in terms of ad edit ratio, if one may put it that way. So that's another thing that tends to work to OTT's advantage over and above what Karthik was saying.
By the way, I mean, to digress for a moment, Harsh, having non-skipper advertising. I mean, 3-4 years ago, I think when the creators of TV ads were unleashed on OTT, they went really crazy. You'd have these ads which would go on for 2 minutes and 3. They were like mini films, all frustrated filmmakers basically taking to OTT. But you're seeing much less of that, isn't it? Now.
Now it's the age of short form. Who knows? I mean, we all know what's short form now today. It's a reverse. Yeah.
That's true. That's true. It's gone absolutely in reverse. So yesterday, by the way, in one of the panels, one of the advertisers, it was, I think, for one of the new age brands, I think one of the cryptocurrency brands, he says we do a lot of experimentation with OTT, because he says that before we bet big money on TV, sometimes they use it basically like a lab. That's the way he was saying it, so that's another thing. So which are the, so apart from performance, is there any other aspect of interactivity for which, Mohit, is that advertisers use it for? I mean, is there some other way that interactivity can work on OTT?
See, finally, it has to be driven by performance only. So, end of the day, any interactivity that you do on OTT has to be driven by performance. And I can give you an example. Karthik was mentioning about food apps. So, first we had done an app integration on Hotstar while, while watching IPL, they could do online buying. So finally, again, it is driven by performance. Any integration that you do over there will have to be driven by performance for the brands to.
Okay.
I think it's absolutely general, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I think in general whether you call it performance or not, one more thing I'd like to touch upon is the cohorts that they give you, the kind of target audiences that they give you, which are not possible on television. So whether it's interest-based, which could work for a branding campaign as well, need not be necessarily for performance. That also works very well. So, a person who's interested in, say, food, for example, or off late, there is also this interesting cohort that you can get, which is like IPL viewers on television. So, if you don't have the monies to buy IPL on TV, then can you target them on digital? So that's very interesting. Yeah. So those cross media cohorts are also available today on OTT, which is interesting.
Okay. If I may interrupt for a minute, audience, if you would like to ask the panel any questions, I feel a couple have come in, but please feel free. Towards the end, I'll accommodate as many as I can. Okay. So one of the things is, so which are the broad, if you were to look at the broad categories, which are the ones which have been the early ones to try OTT, and have they remained the same, or have things changed in the last 4-5 years? And why are those categories?
The new age clients, as you yourself said, cryptocurrency being one of them, have been using OTTs in a big way. So edutech, fintech, food tech these are the ones who've used OTT in a far I would say bigger manner than established brands. And one big reason for that, I'm not saying established brands are not there, because many of our clients have today moved on to OTT, especially cricket, because in India, OTT and the way we look at OTT in a larger way, evaluates them with cricket only, because that's where it all started. But because you can experiment and you can see a result towards performance, towards your brand KPIs, maybe that's the reason why the new age brands are more fond of them than the rest of them. Having said that, even the other brands are looking at them in a big way.
Is there any move? Sorry,
I just think I want to add to that.
Please.
I think if I look at it from the Unilever ecosystem, and we've got enough and more brands across. What I tend to notice is that over a period of time, it's the kind of audiences that OTT has managed to attract is where the kind of brands have started to come in. So with the scaling up of OTT over a period of time, and I think it was scaling up pretty fast as compared to where it is right now, it seems to have seen one growth vector, and then it seems to have stopped at some point in terms of the growth rate seem to have stabilized. A lot of premium brands used to come on board earlier, and we used to not see too many of the mass brands wanting to experiment. But now we also see more mass brands wanting to be on OTT, and to the point that Vanita was making as far as interest groups and cohorts are concerned, it's something that tends to bring in more number of brands on board. So I think it is more the premium brands who came on board first, and now the mass brands seem to have come on board along with it.
So I think Mohit, you were saying this, that if you look at new age brands tend to come because although there is no standard universally accepted measurement metric, through performance marketing they get a sense of whether the advertising is working, and so that becomes a stand-in for the normal measure. Is that it? Is that why they come?
Yes, and also the entry costs are lower. So when you look at it from a comparison to television, the same the same event, if you were to get into a television environment, the entry cost would be different. So both of them work, and the more important part is that you can get some data out of whatever you do over there, which can be attributed towards your brand results. So that's more important.
So one of the phenomena, one of the things that's happening is, I mean, one of you might have the figures. I can't remember it offhand, but is that a rising minority of people are now watching OTT shows on smart TVs, right? Do you think the numbers? First question is, do you think the number is significant now? I mean, to take note of, or is it a very tiny minority which has no impact?
And it's about 8 to 10% of. It's about 25 million to 30 million, depending on which source one is looking at in terms of connected TV households. So that's 8 to 10% of the overall TV household population.
And if you had to take a guess 2 years from now, what kind of numbers might these be? Karthik, you have been very quiet.
So 25-30 million, which Harsh is saying, that could easily double. There's a reason for it, because large companies are the cost of a smart TV has come crashing down.
I know, it's very low.
Let's say a TV, a 65-inch, very large TV, which would have costed say 3 lakhs of rupees or 3.5 lakhs, is now available at maybe around 70,000 or 60, depending on the brand, of course. And that coupled with many other things like players like Jio, which they are doing, even the box. Even if I don't have a 65-inch TV, if I were to take a Jio connection, I have a capability therefore to start becoming a smart TV household. And this is a household. So 25-30 million households, individuals, even while India population is 4 average per household, you take half of it also, it's easily double. So we are talking of 50 million at least.
So what will it do to advertiser interest? What would you say to your clients when increasingly, it's twice as many people, 1.5 times as many people are watching shows on TV? Because the shows will change as well. I think that's the subject of the next discussion. But how will advertisers react to that?
So advertisers, see, the first thing which is likely to happen is if your same TV, which is a linear TV, is also becoming like an internet, then your behavioral change is going to happen from a viewership perspective. Okay. So this is one of my hypotheses, is that ad avoidance towards linear TV will increase, because I can therefore move to a non-linear format for a show which is for me at my time. I'm not pressurized to see that show at 9 o'clock, but if my time is 7 in the morning, because that's when I wake up, I can watch it. So a lot of behavioral changes which will happen, and cohorts will exhibit that. And therefore more room for experimenting. what type of behavior, which geography, which consumer groups, which product category, a host of questions. What frequency? Do I need to run a campaign in the same frequency? Or if the clutter in OTT, which today is far lesser, why do I have to run the same frequency which I'm running on television? Where it's still, many advertisers still have by default or otherwise a SOV-led thinking. Lots of, let's throw a lot of advertising. I don't need to do that.
Okay, we have just 5 minutes left. So I'm going to quickly toss some questions which have come in, because I have now gone and said that please send me questions. So I have to, I must address them. One of the, okay, let me just start. It says, Ashwini says, is the real problem the lack of a universally accepted measurement metric and the absence of a unified view of the consumer across OTTs? Or is it about the lack of transparency between individual platforms and advertisers? Anybody can take it, and we'll have to just take it very quickly because we don't have time.
I think it's a mix of both.
It's both, right? Yeah. It is both.
Yeah, it's both.
Okay. So, okay, there's one which just says great session, guys. So, okay, YouTube versus OTT, given that YouTube is moving towards reservation buys, eliminating the skip asset. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what this is. What would you say still pushes OTT over YouTube? Is it frequency building, brand safety, more NCCSA audiences?
Not really. I think none of those in my mind. The point we are making is YouTube scores over OTT still, right? So the question is reversed here. So I'm not understanding. So are we saying, you're asking what is in favor of OTT versus YouTube? Is that the question?
This is the most I know, Manika, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just flipping it, saying
Yeah,
that
yeah, that's the way I also
that,
understood it.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, all right, okay. All right, and view on, okay, that's all right. Okay, so I have one, just one sec. I think, is there anything else here that you think? Why not an industry initiative for OTT GRP system? Tell me one thing is, I think all of you have, I think each of you has brought this up, which is, do you see any solution to having something like a la Bark in OTT? Because however large it gets, however seriously advertisers take it, that one issue is not going away, is it? Do you see anything on the horizon which might, solve this problem? Or are we anywhere closer, or is it not being addressed at all? At least I don't read of anything that, because after that ACOM thing, etc., then after that, there's really been nothing that I've read. Is there anything possible?
This is my complete conjecture, not that
please.
I have any information.
Please.
I don't think we are in a position where as an industry, we will be able to come to an integrated solution easily. The reason is the cost. Even if you find out who's going to fund it, that's one big question.
Yeah.
The short-term answer is that there are maybe independent players who will find smart, hacks around OTT measurement. There are already few players. There could be many more. And what is going to change dramatically is when the connected TV ecosystem, like 25 million, becomes maybe even 40, 50 million, which possibly will happen very soon.
Very soon, yeah.
Then the entire dynamics will change, because then you will have the big daddies of smart TV, then you will have the big daddies of OTT and also the television, all wanting therefore to measure, because the entire universe is now pretty large enough for everyone to take notice. So short answer, in the short term, I don't think any industry-wide initiative will happen, surely because I don't think the industry can afford so much of money. Who's going to support that?
Okay. And I think doing it, it will make sense only when Bark does it, which is a TV piece. Otherwise, if somebody else does it, then again the same problem. So it needs to be an integrated panel. So to that extent,
it will again 5 years later, 7 years later, come back to Bark again. No?
Bark again, yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree with Karthik. The cost is the biggest constraint. Yeah.
So we've got just 1 minute left. Just one last question to each of you. 3 years later, if you're sitting here again, the same panel discussing this same thing 3 years later, apart from the measurement system, would we be discussing anything else differently?
Yeah, I'm sure, loads. I mean, it's so dynamic, right? I mean, I'm sure there's so many more things that will come in the picture in terms of the cohorts, in terms of the way, like the smart TVs already started, some newer points, but I think all of what we are talking have been multiplied like hugely. And there'll be lots more on the radar, certainly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't know what's going to be happening 5 years down the line. Technology is changing so fast that it's difficult to predict what is going to be happening. Maybe we'll be talking meta at that point in time. You know, it'll be a different discussion altogether. So difficult to predict at this point in time.
Harsh?
Look, I don't know what will happen 3 years from now, but I think now is the time for some of the OTT players to decide whether they want to go the AVOD route or the SVOD route, right? And there are players who've gone the SVOD route, which is Netflix and Prime, where we know that we cannot advertise and we're living with it. So we're finding some content solutions over there.
Okay.
But the AVOD world needs to they need to be clear and then get inspired by the likes of Google and Meta to see what else can happen.
Okay. Karthik, one last sentence. We're out of time, but would you like to add anything to that?
Future difficult to predict, but hope is we will have hopefully good things which have worked, kind of case studies which have worked, and even case studies which has not worked. That's what I would hope to say.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. That is so we will meet 3 years later to discuss the same thing and we'll see who's right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience. And please wait. The speakers for the next session are already here. It will begin within a minute. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, panelists. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.